They're trying to raise $35 million for this gubernatorial candidate who has 500 flock cameras in his city in San Jose, who is willing to go dark with this money. Like they're trying to hide the money further than what Citizens United already allows with these PACs. So they've created a whole nother structure for hiding this money. Although it came out already that people who had co-founded Palantir, like Joe Lonsdale, were funding, Gary Tan was funding Mahan's candidacy, and Joe Lonsdale was also funding Hilton's, the Republicans' candidacy. He maxed out to both of them. I'm not going to vote for someone who's supported by MAGA oligarchy, and I can't believe that some of our local electeds are endorsing. So I'm stunned.
What happens when the fight for community voice becomes the fight for our democracy? That's the question driving this episode of Just Talks podcast. I'm Allie Collins, and in 2021, I began documenting the rise of political attacks on schools and educators and their impacts on our democracy. This season, I'm expanding the lens. I'm talking with artists, experts, and influencers who are fighting to defend progress and protect our most vulnerable communities. With so much money and political grift involved in national politics nowadays, it's hard to have faith in government. Despite this, we still have caring, intelligent, and empathetic leaders interested in taking on a role to protect our communities and preserve our democracy. National outrage consumes our media and oftentimes our minds, and it's easy to feel like we have no control. Nonetheless, many decisions are made each day at a local level, and as individuals, we may not have much control over what happens in Washington, but our involvement can have a great impact on what happens in our local municipalities. Today, my guest and I will break down exactly what's happening and give you the tools to get involved. If you want to understand the real threats to our communities and learn how to build a more just future, keep watching. The fight for our democracy starts now. Joining me today is Ami Chen Mills, who is currently a progressive Democratic candidate running for mayor of Santa Cruz, California. Ami is here to encourage us to think beyond the political machine. Instead of choosing the lesser of two evils or giving up on politics altogether, we can put our energy behind non-traditional candidates who have demonstrated experience and ongoing commitment to our communities. She will share ways that we can get beyond petty partisan infighting and learn from one another to support our communities. She will also inform us about ways we can support local progressive candidates like her who want to bring their expertise and inclusive approach to solving local problems. Let's get into it. I think originally I saw you on TikTok sharing opinions in 2020, 2021. Around that time, there was a lot of things happening, and I really enjoyed your political commentary, and then got to know you better as somebody who hosted a regular radio show with a political focus. And I always appreciated both your insight, but also the wide range of guests that you had on the show. Very wide ranging. I also know that you're an educator, and now in the last few years, you're getting involved with political activity, which is a shift. And so I just wanted to talk to you as somebody that I respect, somebody that's very knowledgeable, somebody that's been following political activity locally and also in the country. I'd love to talk to you more about what you're seeing now and where you're hoping to make a contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Allie. Yes, and I had you on the show. Actually, I think at the time it was a Talk of the Bay show on KSQD that I had you on before I started the Moment of Truth program. And now I don't do Moment of Truth because they kicked me off the airwaves because I'm running for office. So I can't get back on to do the show until I have stopped running. And I think I can still do it as the mayor if I get elected to be the mayor of Santa Cruz, which is what I am engaged in right now, is campaigning for mayor of Santa Cruz. And I did run for county supervisor in 2022. I came in very late. Our idea was to push the race into a runoff. I didn't make the runoff, but we weren't terribly surprised that I didn't make the runoff. It was a good experience for me in terms of learning how to campaign and what it means to campaign. It's a heck of a lot of work. So I had to think about it a lot this time. I have a background in journalism. I have a background in activism. I have a background in starting a nonprofit and doing community-based resiliency work around the country and even around the globe. And I'm an author, and I've written about political things like the Central Intelligence Agency on college campuses. I actually just got interviewed by Covert Action Information Bulletin, which is like just such an old publication in my mind because I was researching it back when I was writing about the CIA. I also have written about resiliency for youth and for educators. So I've lived many different lifetimes. I think the theme has been that I've always wanted to be a helpful person. I've always wanted to correct injustices and things that I think are unfair. I still very much have that impulse. It's probably one of the reasons I'm also running. I did serve on the Westlake School Site Council here in Santa Cruz, which is where my kids went to elementary school. And then I also served on the City Homeless Committee, which is an appointed position. Westlake School Site Council was an elected position amongst the parents of that school. And then after my supervisor run, I was encouraged to run for the Democratic Central Committee, ran for that. I won that. Actually, I was surprised with the second highest number of votes.
I want folks to understand because this is a very important committee, and a lot of people who consider themselves Democrats don't actually know what the Democratic Central Committee is, and they're located across the country. So, could you explain a little bit about that and how that relates to larger Democratic activity in the state?
People have spent $8 million on electing people to the San Francisco Democratic Central Committee, which blew my mind because we're still a little podunk down here. People don't spend that much money. People campaign a little bit, but they don't spend a fraction of that much money. But what we do is we endorse local candidates. So we do forums with local candidates, and then we decide on a candidate by vote. There's a 60% threshold. And then when a candidate has been endorsed, we are putting resources into that candidate. They have to be a Democrat. There are some issues with that. Like one of our county supervisor races only had one candidate, the incumbent, because the other two had not registered as Democrats in time. Like you have to be registered as a Democrat
in order to be supported as a Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and that's fair if you're the Democratic Party, but it also has to be for a certain amount of time. So at any rate, we didn't endorse in the mayor's race, which was kind of a coup because normally we back a kind of establishment candidate, but with my entry into the Democratic Central Committee and that of many others, it's shifted to become a more truly progressive DCC here in Santa Cruz. And we've had progressives on it before, but it feels like there are more now. And so there's more pushback sometimes with certain issues like Jimmy Panetta, who's our congressional rep, who is expecting our work on his behalf in this election. He has a challenger and he has received a ton of APAC money. His votes on Israel and Gaza have been really bad. He also takes a lot of defense contract money, and he's good in other ways, securing funds for local infrastructure projects and all that kind of thing. But now that there's a challenger, it's been really hard to have a conversation within the DCC about that, but people have been willing to have a conversation.
I've interviewed folks from around the country. Santa Cruz is a very special place. It's a small town in some ways. It's also very international in a lot of ways. It's a very beautiful and special city. Tell me a little bit about that for folks not as familiar with Santa Cruz. It's close to San Francisco, but it's definitely its own community.
It's its own community. It has a long history of having a lot of hippies. The entry of the university into this community was a big deal, and it brought forward a lot of radicalism at the time. And so we have a lot of older hippies. We also have a lot of Silicon Valley wealth that is here, that has been coming here. If you think about it, we're half an hour from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is right over the mountains. We're closer to Silicon Valley, I think, than San Francisco is. It just feels like Silicon Valley is farther away because we have mountains between us and San Jose. But what's been happening is a lot of folks who work in tech have been either buying second homes here and they'll keep them empty, or some people rent a place here and commute to get over the hill, or they work from home. And that's driven our housing prices up. The jobs that are around here are not the same kinds of jobs. So if you work at a local coffee shop, or if you're a preschool teacher, or if you're a firefighter, even a police officer, it is hard to find housing here that you can afford. And so we have the same forces. We have a very strong YIMBY movement here. I would say that it is tempered by people even within the particular YIMBY group that's here, and politicians and activists too, that we all really care about affordable housing. We all really push for affordable housing units. But again, like there are a lot of gaps and missing pieces. Like who is moving into these quote unquote affordable units according to the housing numbers that we have from the state that we're supposed to allow, right? Which is a lot. Our RENA numbers for this cycle, which is the number of housing development permits we need to be ready to approve, right? Our RENA numbers are 5 times what they were in the last cycle. And I don't know what's happening in San Francisco, but I have seen various statistics about rents either going up $200 a month, or someone said, oh, they just went down. So I'm trying to look into it, but honestly, I think it's many forces. It is a lack of housing, but it's also the fact that we're gentrifying, and that is hard for people. And it's something that the city needs to push back on in terms of who's getting into these units. We're working on a local preference initiative that I support. I haven't been that involved. I've been more involved in the anti-flock campaign here, which we just were able to successfully cancel the ALPR flock contract here at the city level. And that was huge.
When I met you, you were very heavily involved in journalism about political activity or things that were happening.
Yeah.
It seems like you're moving more and more towards actually policy, becoming a policymaker. And what is it that motivated you to get more involved in actual governance? Is it something you've always wanted to do? Is it something that happened? Is it the shifts that we've seen nationally or locally, or even maybe shifts in the demographics that you're seeing in your city? Where do you hope to be able to make changes that you were not able to make as just a regular citizen?
Well, working on the flock campaign as a citizen activist was heartening to me, because I am someone who tries to keep relationships open, even if there is, I was talking to someone I ran against for county supervisor, and I'll give her some credit, Shebra Collin Johnson, who met with me, talked with me about the flock campaign. Another council member, Renee Golder, who our kids are friends. And so we've sort of slowly become friends, even though she's much more conservative than I am in her politics. So it was heartening to me that we could have a conversation and talk about the things that activists know. And here's something that I would like to say. Activists generally spend a lot of time researching what they're working on. And they often don't get the credit for knowing what they're talking about. And I know, Allie, as a activist yourself, that we sometimes know things that our elected officials literally do not seem to have a clue about. And so I just got frustrated. Like, here I am, unpaid, being an activist, spending so much time. If I were sitting on council, then I could just make these decisions, make these votes, have these conversations without all this incredible amount of work. The other thing that upset me is that it's really our money. It's our money, and I want our council members to know what's going on. And there are many places where I see on the current council, which has been created by certain elements of our community, along with the real estate industry. There's a machine behind it all. I'm not saying they're all terrible people. I'm just saying I know the mechanisms by which these people got elected, right? So I've been frustrated with, like, if we had some of these activists in the community around homelessness, environmental issues, around surveillance, mass surveillance and federal surveillance, it would just be a more balanced council that actually understands what is happening. For example, a few of our council members, this is just one example, and one of the machine-backed candidate for mayor, Ryan Coonerty is his name. He was a former supervisor and used to be on the council. He is working for Matt Mahan, the San Jose mayor who's running for governor. I don't know if you know about Matt Mahan. Do you know much about Matt Mahan?
Explain it for everybody.
Yeah.
And you said this candidate is also backed by
real estate.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a real estate consultant. And he also founded Predpol, Predictive Policing. He founded Predpol.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he's very pro surveillance. He's already talking about bringing ALPR, automatic license plate reader cameras, back into our community. He's like, oh, well, Flock wasn't a good company. Let's get another one. Yeah, let's get another one.
So you guys were actually able to prevent them from coming into your community, Flock. And like I said, not everybody knows the depth of information that you do. And I'm very much aware of it in San Francisco, right? Because it's funny, in Northern California, you kind of assume everybody's being inundated by surveillance, but there are communities that it hasn't come to yet. And it's important for us to let folks know. They think we're crazy when we're talking about it, but it's actually coming to them soon.
Yeah.
But can you explain a little bit about this prevalent state that we're becoming and who Flock is, what they've been doing, and the fact that you've been able to push back against that?
Yeah.
I know there's communities that are really, really fighting that, and help also let us know what are some successful strategies that you would give to communities that are now just starting that kind of fight.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's actually been out quite a bit on social media. A lot of people do know about Flock because their reputation is so bad.
Yeah.
And the breaches of the data, of our travel data, of our personal, and what I assume, what I think should be our private travel data, right? These breaches have been horrific, like to ICE, to Customs and Border Protection, to Department of Homeland Security. Police have been searching our data we found through public records requests for stalking women. Police have stalked ex-wives. So this was like a police officer in Georgia, going through
Wow.
our data looking for particular women, not about crimes, but just looking for these women, right? And then there was a case of a woman who had an abortion in Texas, I believe, and the cops were using block data to try to find her because it's all networked together. So it's not a closed circuit system. If you have a camera and you're actually sort of like recording at your home, and then you have a place where you can see the footage and it's all contained within that system, that's closed circuit. If you have a business like that.
So people think that they have cities get a Flock camera and that just goes to the police.
Right. They
Right?
think so.
That's the assumption. I think a lot of people who might be pro this, like, well, it's good because it
Yeah.
makes it more safe,
Yeah.
right? But it doesn't. It goes anywhere pretty much, right? And people have access to it even outside of the police department.
Well, we discovered that the cameras can be hacked. There is data that is stored inside the cameras that can be hacked from outside with some simple pieces of tech equipment.
Mhm.
We discovered that Ben Jordan, BENN Jordan on YouTube, had done research showing that Flock login credentials allegedly, I mean, this is what it said on the post on the dark web, were for sale on the dark web. So Flock wasn't even requiring two-step or multi-factor authentication on these login credentials to get in to see everybody's travel data and travel patterns. If you get into
Wow.
one part of the system that's networked with all the other parts, you can see almost anything. And so it's been a lot. The most recent thing has been that Flock employees were found to have been watching gym classes and preschool classes at a local Jewish community center in Dunwoody. I think that was also in Georgia, Dunwoody, Georgia. I hope I've got that state right. And so, and maybe they were testing it out. We don't know what their excuse was, but all those employees were scrubbed from the internet, their names after that breach, after that reveal. So at any rate, point being, let's not forget who's in power at the federal level and what they're in. And Larry Ellison of Oracle has said, we will have no crime because we will be watching everyone. And we know that's the same philosophy of all these tech bro executives, the tech oligarchy, I call them. A lot of them are in San Francisco, not too far from us. They're all Silicon Valley people, and they're interested in all the data collection they can get for AI, for surveillance, and they're aligned with the administration. So we need government officials locally who understand this threat to our community, to migrants, to immigrants, to transgender people,
Right.
to women, to people of color, to journalists, to activists. I'm just not understanding, and this thing about people locally endorsing Matt Mahan, they're trying to raise $35 million for this gubernatorial candidate who has 500 Flock cameras in his city in San Jose, and who is willing to go dark with this money. Like they're trying to hide the money further than what Citizens United already allows with these PACs, where we don't
Wow.
know. So they've created a whole nother structure for hiding this money. Although it came out already that people who had co-founded Palantir, like Joe Lonsdale, were funding, Gary Tan was funding Mahan's candidacy, and Joe Lonsdale was also funding the Republicans' candidacy. He maxed out to both of them. So that's incredibly, to me, compromising for Mahan. I'm not going to vote for someone who's supported by MAGA oligarchy. And I can't believe that some of our of our local electeds are endorsing Mahan. And I can't believe that Ryan Coonerty, who's running for mayor, is endorsing Mahan. So I'm stunned.
Do you think that there's been a shift in political attitudes with this influx of folks from Silicon Valley? Has it always been this way in Santa Cruz, or do you think it's changing?
It's definitely changed. Well, I mean, it's been up and down with sometimes more conservative people, sometimes more liberal people, always supposedly Democrats. Sometimes you wonder, if they're just saying Democrats or they just registered as Democrats. But recently, since we had our own recalls here of progressives, when 4 progressives were elected to city council, and the whole landlord community and real estate industry freaked out. They were talking about just cause eviction. There was a rent control measure that had been defeated and admittedly by even progressives, what maybe wasn't well written and was maybe too overreaching, what have you. But when these progressives even mentioned just cause eviction, which was just one part of that, and no one knew what they were going to actually come up with as a resolution, the conversation started about who to recall first. And then, I mean, it's fine if you want to gather your funding and all your power and try to recall people, but be honest about it. What ended up happening was this sort of smear campaign, which you're familiar with, which was about bullying women. And this was one of our probably most radical Black progressive council members was the main target. And then a white man who was also very progressive and helped get all those people elected to council, Chris Crone, who's actually running for mayor right now alongside of me. And I actually spoke with someone from the PAC, Santa Cruz Together at that time. And this person told me, I didn't know why we were recalling Chris, the white guy. And she told me, oh, and then they said, it's so we don't look racist.
So you're running for mayor. What are your main campaign issues that you're talking about? What are you hoping that you can achieve in that role?
Well, we've had a lot of housing built recently, especially downtown. People are freaking out about it. Not everybody, but a bunch of people are freaking out because just the whole feel of the town seems like it's completely changing. And so we need someone in that position who is not beholden to the real estate industry or to any PAC. We have the EMB pro housing laws at the state level. We have to deal with them. That's fine. I think we do need more housing, but we need someone who can really push back without having to answer to corporate funders from real estate, basically. So that's one platform line or one plank is that I want to be able to push back and to talk to the community about what do you want. We have a survey that we've already put out and they have their preferences. And so let's get that done. The council's been, I don't think, as responsive as it should be. I know that from lobbying the council myself, returning emails, returning phone calls. Half of them don't return phone calls. And this is a small town. You should be able to return a phone call, especially about an important issue, or return an email. And so we need more transparency. We need the public to be able to come and speak to us in a way that's not just 2 minutes at a microphone. I'm really interested in deeper dialogues. So I'm planning to meet with people on the Monday before the council meeting, go over the agenda, talk about it in a way that's more free flowing, where we can be more natural and really get our concerns out and address concerns. I want to, of course, protect whatever ecosystems we have left here. It's very important right now with our biological diversity threatened at the global level in a very serious crisis level way. And so there are attempts to bring the salmon back up into some of our tributaries on the San Lorenzo River. We have to protect our water, even with the RENA numbers being what they are. If I find out, which I'm trying to do now, that we can't support all this housing with the water that we have access to, which is not connected to the Sierra snowmelt like you all are, it's our own water system. We get water from the Santa Cruz Mountains, basically, and from the San Lorenzo River for the most part. And our reservoir is called Loch Lomond Reservoir. When we cannot accept RENA numbers that are higher than what we can handle, and I don't see that kind of watchdog energy on the current council. So we need that watchdog energy. And that's where people say, oh, activists are just so crazy. I know what it is to be an activist. Also now being on the DCC, I know what it is to craft resolutions and to make policy. We don't make policy so much on the DCC as much as we review it and then we endorse it, recommend
Right.
it. I have no issue with that. I'm a writer. I'm a researcher. I think that we need this kind of energy on the council, which is bringing in activist energy with the capacity to have dialogues with people. I'm not going to get my way. It's not a strong mayor position. It means I still have to get 3 more votes on a 7-person council to move anything forward. So that means 4 out of 7. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of conversation.
I really believe it's important for folks to be involved at the local level. And a lot of times people wait until the midterms, and we can't do that. We have to get out of that mindset. So number one is, how can folks support you if they're not local? Is there a way for folks to support somebody who's really just a true community member? You're educated, you're aware, and you want to get involved because you want to have rational governance, right? But beyond that, what are things that, what can folks do to just support community-led decision-making that's informed? It sounds like you want to bring people together. You want people to be able to have more transparency. How can we support if I want to have sane governance? That's something pretty basic, but really, really hard, it seems like, in today's age.
Well, you can go to my website, which is at Ami Chen Mills. That's Amy with an I, Chen, CHEN Mills.com. That's my campaign website. And
I'll post it in the description and in the feed
thank
as well.
you. And then under events, you can see how to get involved just with the mayoral campaign and to some extent the city council campaigns, because not only am I posting the forums that you could go to that are being sponsored by Lookout Santa Cruz, which is our new online media publication, but I'm also co-sponsoring forums with some of the other candidates, meaning we want to have forums. I want to have forums that allow for more questions, that allow for a back and forth. So I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is or walk my talk. And so if you go to events, you'll see we have one forum planned called Another Way. And I was just talking to my team about this, how to structure the discussion so that we actually will be going around to circles of people. The candidates will go into each group and then we will rotate so that each little group of people gets to really meet us and talk to us and ask us questions in a small,
as opposed to one of these big kind of
where we're
formal
way up here.
panel.
And you get to submit a question on a little 3x5 card, and maybe it gets asked and maybe it doesn't get asked. And who's the gatekeeper for that? Right? It's these media outlets that frankly are part of the establishment in the end, as great as some of the reporters are. So there's that. And then also social media. I'm doing a lot on social media. I tend to do that anyway. When we have a DCC meeting, I'll post everything that happened. And people are like, oh my God, I didn't even know what that was. Nothing. And this is what we did at DCC. Find out. So they're finding out. And I'm posting as I'm going through my campaign about what's happening, what I think about things, and also even city council agenda items that are coming up that are important now before I get to the election or make the runoff or whatever. And so Ami Chen Mills, just search for that on Facebook and Instagram.
And when are the elections?
Okay, ballots drop soon. They drop in like 10 or 12 days. I think they drop May 5th.
Okay.
And that's for governor too. So the DCC recommendation, I will share it with everyone, I think it's sound, is actually to wait until the end of May, close to the election, and then see who's polling highest and vote for one of the top 2. That's the idea. I would not vote for Mahan. You're not going to make me vote for Mahan.
Because there's so many candidates this time around.
So many candidates. So exactly. And we don't want to split the vote because there are 2 Republicans who are polling high. And it's a jungle primary. That means that the top 2 candidates could be 2 Republicans if we don't get our act together and coordinate to vote for just 1 or 2 Democratic candidates.
How can folks get involved? You've been involved for a long time. A lot of people are really understanding that they need to get involved, but maybe haven't felt comfortable or don't know what to do. It's kind of overwhelming. Now there's so much to do. And what would you recommend to just average folks that want to support sane, rational, community-based governance and maybe candidates for the political process in their part of the country?
They should join my campaign. Very simple answer. Yeah, join my campaign. If you really want to join someone else's campaign, join someone else's campaign. Join a campaign. It has been actually, Allie, it's been a relief to psychologically to just focus on our city and how do we beat back these fascist authoritarian elements in our city. And that's where we can get something done. And as much as I've covered the national news, and I think it's important because we all do vote in national elections and we need to be aware, it is SHIT show out there. It is insane what's happening. And so when I look around my community, even folks that I disagree with, even the leading candidate, Ryan Coonerty, I can see the good parts of him. I can see the good parts of council members that I've disagreed with in the past that I still disagree with on Mahan endorsements. This is called being human together and pushing for the things we care about, trying to educate each other on the things that we care about. And so this is a place where you can have an idea about what's happening on council or at the county supervisor level, and then you can go to a meeting and find out if that's true. And I think that's really important. And then you can either argue and disagree, or you can say, oh my gosh, I actually, that's not so bad. And it's been both for me where I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so bad. And other times I'm like, actually, that's pretty good what they're doing. So come and get involved, join my campaign, join a campaign, come to one of the forums, follow my social media because I actually let you know what's happening as much as I know while I'm campaigning, as much as I can track the council meetings right now.
What I'm hearing from you that's really positive is I think about this circle of control and the circle of influence, and that it's always the case, but right now it really does feel like things are out of control. And I think a lot of people want to shut down. You get into this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And to be able to focus, for me, my local school was something that I could get a handle on. As a parent, I could get involved, I could volunteer, and I felt like I made a difference. At a local level, you share common issues with folks. You may not always agree, but you are neighbors. And there is something that's really humanizing about that. And it reminds you that even people that you have differences with on a philosophical level, that I do believe this, most people are good people. Most people want to help their neighbor. We have maybe disagreements about how we do that, but it feels much more doable. And at least it gives me hope that there are good people out there at a time when sometimes it feels very overwhelming. So I think your story is very inspiring as somebody who knows a lot to say, I actually want to do something with that knowledge and make some decisions. You're somebody that's actually knowledgeable and wanting to take that knowledge and also learn. You're open to learning from other folks, but we do need to have folks who are knowledgeable in office. And for some reason, it's not always the case. As we've seen, people are not elected based on knowledge or experience. But at the local level, I do think you can elect good people to office, but it does take support. Is there anything else you would like to say or add to this conversation? I've really appreciated just touching base with you and hearing about your perspectives. But is there anything else that you'd like to add to finish it out?
Yeah, I'll add something that's been on my mind quite a lot in the last few years. And that is that we come from different camps a lot of the time. Activists can be very critical of people who get into electoral politics, and people in electoral politics can be very critical of activists. And you don't understand what we're dealing with. There's many forces and pressures and yada, 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 right? And so I'm trying to think of who else, possibly the business community, possibly even your real estate agents and your mom and pop landlords. Locally, these people are making millions and billions of dollars, they may be making a few million, some of them, because their property values are so high. But one thing that I would say, especially about civic engagement and activism, is like we tend to jump on people for choosing to act in a certain way in a certain role. And I have seen that the activists for the unhoused have made a difference at council. Even though we set up an oversized vehicle ordinance, which some of us were really very concerned about because that meant towing people's vehicles that were their homes. Right now, I don't think, and I'd have to go check the numbers, but at the last meeting I was at, we'll say this, no RV had been towed. And that's because activists show up every time when that issue is around. They join the little committee, like an oversight committee around the OVO. And right now we're fighting to protect. The Coastal Commission mandated that they have safe parking and a 24-hour safe parking program up at the Armory, which is up near our golf course in our city. And that was established, and now it's threatened. The city council wants to go and remove that from the agreement about having this oversized vehicle ordinance where they can tow people who have, larger vehicles and they're there overnight. And so I just see that we all have different skills and talents, and we all follow our own wisdom, and we go where we're feeling called. And I wish we could stop the friendly fire. Certainly can get upset when people are being hurt, and we do. Gaza is a big issue that people get very emotional about, and I get it. And we should allow people to be emotional who feel emotional, but we tend to attack each other a lot. And so I think, and I can jump in there too. I'm just saying, when I actually sit down and talk to people, I get a better perspective of why they're doing what they're doing. And then if I want to change what they're doing with our tax dollars, I have a better angle on it because I understand the reasons that people have for doing what they're doing. So I'd like to say, let's try not to attack each other so much, especially if we're on the same side about most things.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of that happening in the Democratic Party, within the left. I think people are getting tired of it at this point. I hope so, but I do appreciate that. And with that, I want to say thank you again for joining me. Thank you for your service as both a journalist and an educator, and now as a public servant on the DCCC, and wish you luck on your candidacy. I will make sure to post all the links for folks who want to get involved in support. And you can support by donating, even if you're not local. And then there's always a good candidate that's running that maybe is a first-time candidate. And if you say you are sick of politicians, maybe elect somebody that's on the ground doing the work as an organizer or an educator. There's always somebody who needs some support in this system. And with that said, thank you very much and wish you luck. Talking to Amy got me thinking about the Democratic Central Committee and how little most Democrats actually know about these local groups. Because of that, a lot of Democratic committees, at least in California, have been targeted by people calling themselves moderate Democrats, but who actually have strong ties to the AI and surveillance industries, and thus the Trump administration. Democratic committees are the local organizations that send members to statewide conventions and set priorities for the Democratic Party. They also recommend which local, state, and national candidates to endorse and spend a lot of money promoting those endorsements. You know those Democratic voter mailers you get before every election? Most of us don't have time to research every single candidate, so we end up relying on those Democratic Central Committee endorsements to help us cut through the noise. In San Francisco, right-wing political operatives have spent millions of dollars over the past several years to ensure committee members are beholden to tech and real estate interests. These Democratic Central Committee members, who many San Franciscans may have never even heard of, have a lot of local political influence and have pushed initiatives that have increased surveillance, dismantled police oversight, criminalized homelessness, and disenfranchised Black and low-income Latinx communities that literally founded SF. And that's not even counting the various local SF Democratic clubs that have been infiltrated and co-opted by corporate interests. To give you an example, I remember one year when a tech vaping company, Juul, was fighting a ballot measure that would restrict their ability to market tobacco products to kids. Juul was accused of using flashy campaigns, social media influencers, and flavored pods to hook young people on tobacco. Fortunately, Juul lost this fight because in June 2019, San Francisco became the first major U.S. city to ban the sale of all e-cigarettes. But before the ballot measure was passed, Juul tried to fight back by funding a $19 million countermeasure, Prop C. As a member of the Harvey Milk Democratic Club, I remember having to vote on whether to accept a huge donation from Juul. We ended up deciding not to, since we'd be voting on whether or not to endorse Prop C, and that would have been a huge conflict of interest. This is just one example of how getting involved in your neighborhood Democratic Club or local Democratic Party can really have a big impact on how your city supports vulnerable people. In this case, children. Unfortunately, tech oligarchs didn't stop there. In 2021, they realized they could flood the zone with online disinformation, national media stories about SF's so-called doom loop, and millions of dollars in PAC funding. They launched 2 local recalls, one that removed me and my colleagues from the school board, and another targeting our progressive district attorney, who was actually one of the first to charge SFPD officers of police brutality. To give you a sense of scale, these local tech leaders included two close friends of Peter Thiel, the co-founder of Palantir, which, as you may know, is currently being used by ICE to track and deport people. One of them, Gary Tan, has been a very active political donor, investing at least $500,000 of his own money in local campaigns. He now leads Y Combinator, a tech venture capital incubator founded by Thiel and once led by Sam Altman. The other Thiel associate is David Sachs, who, like Thiel, is a South African neo-segregationist. David Sachs, Thiel, and Elon Musk are key members of the so-called PayPal mafia. Sachs was also a major fundraiser for both Governor DeSantis and Trump's presidential campaigns, and is now serving as Trump's AI and crypto czar. In other words, these are not Democrats, and neither are the so-called Democrats they are promoting. When all this political manipulation began happening in 2021, my colleagues and I were targeted by outrage campaigns that pitted Asian Americans against Black and low-income immigrant communities. No matter what we said, local media, which was also largely funded by tech, drowned out our voices. We were recalled, and that kicked off a shift away from progressive leadership. The end result? A year and a half ago, San Francisco elected so-called Democratic Mayor Daniel Lurie, who is a Nepo baby and heir to the Levi Strauss fortune. He has systematically been cutting funding to Black and Latinx communities. Prior to his election, he had no political experience and apparently many ties to Trump. So all this is to say, Steve Bannon was right about one thing. If you want to take back your government, the most effective way is from the bottom up, by getting involved in local politics. Just like the Moms for Liberty crowd, we need progressive Democrats to show up at school board meetings and city halls demanding real representation and compassionate leadership. We need people to volunteer and get involved with neighborhood groups and run for leadership in local Democratic clubs. Local government has a huge impact on everything from taxes and transportation to health and safety, housing, small business investment, and education policy. After my colleagues and I were removed from the school board, the appointed members rewrote the bylaws. They got rid of committees, limited public comment at meetings, which meant less public input and less transparency around board decisions. They also weakened the board's ability to fight school budget cuts and closures, which San Francisco educators and parents are now currently fighting. And this isn't just happening in San Francisco. It's happening all over the country. Not every city has tech oligarchs in their backyard, but thoughtful, engaged citizens can still push back against dark money and media manipulation influencing local elections. If we want a multiracial democracy, we're going to have to fight for it. That means showing up when decisions are being made that impact our local community. Just Talks podcast is produced by me, Ali Collins. I'm an educator, writer, organizer, and parent. I created this show because we can't wait for someone else to save our schools or our democracy. We have to do it ourselves. Here's how you can join the fight today. First, this podcast is free, but independent media isn't cheap. If you value these conversations, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Just Talks podcast. Your support keeps the lights on and the mic open. Second, we need to get off the digital plantation, support independent media, and create your own content. Next month, I'm launching community-based office hours, sometimes alone, sometimes with a guest, to answer your questions. I will also be hosting a Writing as Healing group. Click the link in the description to get on the newsletter so you don't miss the launch. Third, don't forget to support the changemakers featured in the podcast, checking out their work in the description below. Specifically, donate and volunteer to support Amy's mayoral campaign. Finally, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Every share is a signal boost. Let's build a free and just society together. Thank you for watching Just Talks, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.